Welcome to the Manhattan Project, where we neglect kids.
So a couple weeks ago at the Toronto International Film Festival, Evan and I caught a press screening of The Florida Project.
Yeah.
Sean Baker's new movie. That's the guy that directed Tangerine. Remember the transgender drama film that was shot on an iPhone? I really like that movie. Anyway, this one, his new movie, takes place in the slums of Florida, around Orlando, and like the sort of Disney World area, specifically in one sort of rundown motel where a lot of the inhabitants are people that are actually just squatting there, not guests on vacation, so people living in poverty. It follows a young girl and her friends, as well as the young girl's mother, sort of dealing with the trials and tribulations with everyday life. Willem Dafoe plays the guy that's the manager for the hotel, trying to keep all the chaos together. Take a look at the trailer.
Haley, we got a situation here. Open up.
It's only second week of the summer and there's already been a dead fish in the pool.
We're trying to get it back alive.
Water balloons thrown at tourists.
Boobies! Boobies!
I failed as a mother, Moonee.
Yeah, Mom, you're a disgrace.
New job?
Yeah.
If you're working, who's looking after Moonee?
You're not my father.
I don't want to be your
You
father.
can't treat me like this.
So Evan, what were your expectations going into this film?
My expectations were very high.
Have
Now,
you seen Tangerine?
I have seen Tangerine. I like Tangerine. I thought it was quite funny. My expectations were high for this mainly because the reviews were good and I liked the trailer. I thought that the movie might do something for me.
Thought it'd be heartwarming.
Yeah, I thought it'd be kind of heartwarming.
Willem Dafoe says, "I love you too" at the end of the trailer.
I love you too.
The Florida Project is one of those rare movies that is so uncommonly authentic feeling in its sort of depressing, individualistic look at a corner of life or people or location or situations that it really sort of challenges what your understanding of fictional narrative cinema can be. It's an achievement. Yeah, the Florida Project, like I just said in clunky words, feels very much like no other film you've ever seen before. And there are moments of Tangerine that I felt the same way about. I think Sean Baker is an extremely talented and specific visionary director. The way he deals with characters and his screenplay specifically are just so smart. I love the dialogue and the performances he gets out of these people, and just like the stories he's interested in telling that are so far off the path of like other stories we see in not just movies but even indie movies and stuff like that. It is a truly unique film. You thought a movie about transgender prostitutes living in poverty in LA was going to be a depressing film, and like that was the pretty funny movie that like had really dark moments in it with like real character stuff. This is fucking a movie about a kid, and it's so dark. It's not even that funny. It's just so dark.
I think we need to make it known pretty early on that this film, being powerful and authentic, does not condescend. There's nothing like mawkish in its depiction of poverty. It's not a movie that exists so that you cry and then like want to go donate money. Like that's so not in the movie's agenda, even if it does make you feel concerned about poverty. It has an immense amount of empathy for its characters and people living in this world. And what's interesting to me, a decision I thought was really powerful, is you have the Willem Dafoe character who's just a genuinely nice guy. He's not the owner of the motel. He's like the manager, the guy who like runs the day-to-day stuff. And they establish him early on as being someone who is very nice to all the people who live there, but does have to draw some lines. And then like halfway through the movie, we just get a glimpse of his personal life outside of the motel, and it paints him in a way where he might be potentially a selfish person or something like that. And the fact that the movie is able to show him, who could easily have been a one-dimensional guy and no one would have cared because it's so well performed, the fact that we get to see him in 3 dimensions is just such a good example of what this movie does right, and the way that it doesn't just exist to pull strings, but is really a very fair depiction of everything on screen.
I think Willem Dafoe's character is also really effective because he facilitates the same thing in Tangerine that happens here, where you have a lot of vignette type situations where it almost feels like a bunch of little short films where like he picked the location, he picked the environment, and then we're going to see all these cast of characters sort of being wacky or different or funny or interesting. Your protagonist is this one main little girl and her mother. And Willem Dafoe is always trying to deal with all of the broad issues of the hotel on a management level and on an individual people problem level. And that's, again, where I think this movie really shined, is not only does he deliver a great performance through all these different people, but Sean Baker gives you an opportunity to just feel all these different types And it's always really funny. There's always really funny stuff. And for the most part, they all kind of come together at the end. And the ones that don't come together, I think that's okay. It's not meant to be. But it just like, it gives you a great feeling of this lived in world of like what it's like to be on like, basically My Name is Earl. If you guys have seen the show My Name is Earl, these motels that are in the South where because of squatting laws or whatever they're called, no one's allowed to like officially live in these hotels or motels. But since the room per night is so cheap, these like essentially homeless people, their only option is to live in these like hotels and motels that have been designed to be on the outskirts of like Disneyland and other resorts, where it's like, okay, when everything's booked up and the poor people want to go on vacation, they can stay in this hotel that has just like a really, really cheap rate per night. And then so the result is you have a bunch of people that are impoverished, essentially living out of suitcases and then just moving every 10 days or 15 days or how many days you're allowed to stay from this motel to the one across the street and then back to that one. And it's just this sort of like horrible, pathetic life of quasi-nomad homelessness, but it feels like they're all living together.
You brought up a good point, which regards the structure of the movie. Typically, the movies that we like are movies that have pretty classic narrative structure. They're 3 acts, whatever else. And this movie does not. It has the vignettes, but the vignettes have sort of an insidiously effective way to them where once you settle into the rhythm of this movie and you see, here's this little girl, here's how she deals with the rhythms of her life where she doesn't have to move across the street and go back and whatever else, you get accustomed to that and you want it to stay the way it was at the beginning, because there is a very slow sense of escalation throughout the movie, and you know that it's going to end poorly, that basically the balls that her mother is juggling to try to keep them afloat, one of them's going to drop and something terrible is going to happen.
Which also brings us to the point of like, why would you want to watch this film? What's the value in a movie that just, like we said, it's very authentic feeling and it's very depressing. So what's the value? Why does that make a movie so good just because it's real? And I think, to me, it's about sort of the themes, what you can take away from this character at the end. It's all these little moments that come together, and then you learn that ultimately the movie's about like the beauty behind like the willful ignorance of the youthful spirit, right? So the ability that children have to want to not understand things. Like the movie is about how this little girl doesn't understand how awful the situation she's in. But the fact of the matter is we see how precocious she is. We see how much she sort of understands so many things around her. Kids are so resilient. Like it's unbelievable how much bad, horrible things can be happening that can break your spirit or will, and how before your loss of innocence, when you're in your youth, no matter how many things could be potentially breaking your innocence earlier than the average child, your youthful spirit can persist so strongly. And that's sort of the beauty of this film, is like, yeah, what's going to happen with this kid and her mom and the situation and where they're going to go from now? Is everything going to be fucked? But you know she'll be all right, because that's kind of the point of the movie. She was already in an awful situation, and I think that's sort of the beauty of this movie, and that's why I think it comes together as like an effective story. Is, again, not spoiling anything. It's a movie that ultimately does have something to say, and it takes all these vignettes, takes all these moments that we're seeing through the eyes of a kid and seeing from the perspective of a kid how it's like, oh man, we have to eat, whatever for dinner, but that's okay because, we have to syrup for dinner, but that's fun because syrup is fun or whatever, How moments like that can sort of persist in a child's life, and hopefully will, and sort of like give you, at the very least, like a somewhat optimistic look at like humankind and our youth. Yeah, for however messy I sort of put that. That's why I think the movie has value. So my ultimate recommendation of this film is that because of the message it's able to deliver, because of the authenticity of the film, because of how much it affects you while you're watching it and long after you see it, I think it's like an unmissable movie. I think if you're into interesting cinema, if you're into indie movies, Oscar movies, stuff that is different, stuff that's memorable, stuff that gets good reviews, this is one of the best things to come out this year that I've seen, and it's unmissable. If you are not into weird shit and you're not into really dark stuff, avoid it like the plague. I don't know why you'd be this far in our review, but if you're into something a little bit off and different, this thing is seek it out whenever it gets to you. I know it's like New York, LA this weekend, and then it'll expand, but check the internet, see where you can find it. It's worth a trip.
It's funny because one of the thoughts I had after seeing this movie was, man, I want my parents to see this, but it's like you said, they wouldn't like it. It's not a movie for them, but yet I still want them to see it. Because, like you said, it is unmissable. So even people who the movie is not well made for and who could potentially be too alienated to get the message, I still almost want to try, because the movie is well made enough that someone who's alienated might still begrudgingly see things and have their definition of cinema changed a little bit just because they got to see a movie that's this good. So yeah, it's highly recommended.
And in that way, I think it's more effective than Tangerine, where I think it's just as good as, like, Tangerine is just as good as this, as being different and authentic feeling. But this, I think, wraps it together, and part of it helps where he's got a bigger budget, he's got more locations, there's Willem Dafoe in here, but it comes together in such a way where, like, I think you could talk to someone who actually sat through the whole thing despite being, like, truly alienated by how horrific it was. And I think the average, like, intelligent adult would at least be able to say, like, okay, I still don't like it, maybe, but I get it. Like, there is a point. I can see why this movie was made, more so than I think, like, Tangerine, which might be potentially more alienating.
Yeah.
So that's our review. I think you guys got the gist. We saw a bunch of movies, and we see more movies, and we review them, and we don't neglect children. Usually we do other things that are related to movies. Have a good day.